let's follow the money. So all of our feedstocks from which we will make renewable diesel, we're going to make some sustainable aviation fuel too. That gets talked about a lot. We make a little bit of renewable hydrogen. There's a lot going on here, but all of it starts in acreage. So somebody has to grow a crop or grow a four-legged animal. Montana does all of that. You mentioned the Golden Triangle. There's ranching here, but here's the kicker. Those farmers and ranchers are going to send their produce out of state to get processed. We don't have a large meat packing plant here. We don't have a seed crusher for the crops, and so farmers are selling out of state. How does it leave the state? Well, trucks and rail cars. It's going to find a crusher. It's going to find a meat packing plant, and then we're going to buy back, the byproducts, the seed oils. We're going to buy back the rendered products from the animal processing. It's going to come all the way back on a truck and in a rail car. So a whole bunch of money is making a round trip, but it's not sticking to Montana.
6-9 foot pursuit. Stop! Sir! Stop!
Morning, Bruce. Welcome.
Morning, sir.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
I'm super glad we could get this scheduled. I know you have a tight schedule, so it was awesome to be able to fit this in. And so just to kind of start off, kind of tell everybody who you are and what your position is with Calumet.
No, you bet. And I got plenty of time for this. It's an objective of mine and therefore of the company's to do a better job with community outreach and become a part of the community, not just those guys over there. So I'm the executive vice president of Calumet Montana Refining. That's the refinery that's been down here on the river for 100 years at 3rd and 10th. Everybody drives by it. And, we've owned that for about a dozen years. We have tripled the employment. Pretty proud of all the jobs we've added. That brings a lot to the community. We just finished a really big project over the last couple of years. So I'm sure, the sheriff's department was aware of it because we got 2,000 Cajuns in from Louisiana welding stuff for, a year and a half. And, I think that went pretty well from everything I've heard. But I'm not based here, so I'm not a Montanan. I'm the headquarters guy.
Right.
And what we count on is our local leadership to be, to be the face to the community. I just want to encourage that. So I'm more than happy to come on, tell you what we do, tell you how we think about the world. We are going to add, government relations specialist person and a community kind of communications. We see those as different. That's been done by a really strong lady that we've got, in the workforce here, but she's doing that in her part-time. She's actually got a day job.
Yeah.
We're going to beef that up. So we're planning to be a lot more visible, spend a lot more time, participate in a lot more things.
I think that's a huge key. So I have family and friends that work there. And it's fascinating to me because they'll start telling me about projects they're doing, like your biodiesel project. They started talking to me about that. And my question immediately was why? I didn't understand it. And then meeting with different people and some people who lobby for you guys and stuff like that, I kind of started to learn the picture because I wanted to know. I didn't understand it. And it was hard for me to understand. And when people started to explain to me the why behind why you'd make a move like that and all the intricacies of the whole thing, not just how it affects, because this is important too. You guys are a business. It doesn't just have an effect on good things that happen in our community, but it also has a ripple effect into your whole corporation. And so that was kind of seeing the big picture of it really opened up my eyes to how many moving parts you have. And there are so many moving. I mean, if it's a company that big and the growth that you guys have, the amount of property you guys have started to buy up and everything. Okay, it's big and there's a lot of moving parts, but I had no idea until I started to talk to people how many moving parts and how big picture this whole thing was.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great perspective. There's a lot going on, and companies are kind of not normally thinking of themselves as being a community member. So they go, they have their plan, they have their board of directors, they do their thing. But in a smaller town, so I grew up in a small town, one about the size of Great Falls. We're able to have an opportunity, which is to to be a member of the community, to show up at things, and people will understand that differently. But I think it's a good thing. There has to be an economy. I mean, we all work, we all get a paycheck, we all use that to do things. And I'm pretty proud Calumet's been a contributor here. I hope it's important. But when you don't talk to people and they don't know who you are and they don't know what you're doing and things start to change and they wonder what's up, that's kind of on us for not having outreach, right? So this podcast is great. We want to do lots of things like this. And if I pick up on the renewable that you mentioned, so like it or not, agree with it or not, but the federal government's policy is they're going to push this energy transition along. So what's an energy transition? It just says we'd like you to keep doing what you're doing, but can you use a renewable source instead of a fossil source? Any conservationist would understand that, right? I mean, I grew up with land conservation. That didn't mean you can't use the land. It meant you use the land sustainably.
Right.
You can keep hunting. You maintain the population. You don't overfish. Just real basic stuff. So when you think about fuel, and people generally don't, right? You go to the gas station, you stick the nozzle in there, and you get fueled up. Where did it come from? Eventually, it came from a hole in the ground where somebody drilled a well and got crude oil. That's not sustainable because it took millions of years to form that crude oil down there under the ground. What is sustainable is, what if we did the same thing, but we started with plants? So that's what we're doing. Or you started with the waste products from animal value chain, right? So a meat packing plant, at the end of it, is going to have rendering. They're going to have something called tallow.
Mm-hmm.
There's a waste product that comes out of on-purpose corn processing. It's called corn oil. So on. So if we start with those, it's actually the very same things that a couple million years from now will become crude oil. But we can use them today. So I grow a plant. Let's pick one. Let's pick canola because it grows here, or camelina, which I want to talk about. But these things are grown by farmers. They're cash crops. You take the seeds off of these plants, squeeze them, get the oil out, and we take the oil and we turn it into diesel fuel. It's a closed loop. It's a cool little ecosystem.
Yeah.
So what does that do for you? Well, the plant sucked all the carbon dioxide out of the air when it was growing. We made fuel out of it, put it in the vehicle, put the carbon dioxide back into the air where the plant can get at it. Closed cycle, closed loop. That's sustainable. So it's pretty cool. It cost us a lot of money. It is a for-profit business, but the support for that is coming from a whole variety of state government and on both sides of the border, Canada too, incentives. Because back to where the governments want to drive the energy transition, somebody has to pay for the energy transition. If you've seen your electrical price go up at your home, you've seen some inflation there. That's not us. That's an analogy. But wind turbines aren't free. Solar panels aren't free. Who do you think's paying?
Right.
So eventually the government has a role to push policy in that direction. It landed here. We make these fuels. We send them to the West Coast. People on the West Coast send money back.
So, yeah, I like that and I really like the way you introduced this, and I'm glad you brought this up. So I think it's a unique. I mean, once I learned about that was the mission of the biodiesel project, it made a lot of more sense to me, because we live it's called the Golden Triangle here. This is like a big hub this is like the biggest hub for agriculture in Montana, and it's farmers and ranchers. And so you're also, I think this is important too, the way I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're also paying people, you're paying agriculture producers for that waste product.
Oh yeah,
that you're going to turn into biodiesel.
Yeah, very much so. So if you play the game of follow the money, if you've ever heard that phrase,
yes,
let's follow the money. So all of our feedstocks from which we will make renewable diesel, we're going to make some sustainable aviation fuel too. That gets talked about a lot. We make a little bit of renewable hydrogen. There's a lot going on here, but all of it starts in acreage. So somebody has to grow a crop or grow a four-legged animal. Montana does all of that. You mentioned the Golden Triangle. There's ranching here. But here's the kicker. Those farmers and ranchers are going to send their produce out of state to get processed. We don't have a large meat packing plant here. We don't have a seed crusher for the crops. And so farmers are selling out of state. How does it leave the state? Well, trucks and rail cars. It's going to find a crusher. It's going to find a meat packing plant, and then we're going to buy back, the byproducts, the seed oils. We're going to buy back the rendered products from the animal processing. It's going to come all the way back on a truck and in a rail car. So a whole bunch of money is making a round trip, but it's not sticking to Montana. So my personal vision is, why wouldn't there be a crusher built in Montana? There used to be one a long time ago over in the east, Lewiston, if memory serves. Didn't make it. But what's changed is we're now a cash customer for that oil. Yeah, and that's going to make all the difference. So we leased from Joe Stanek. A lot of your folks may know him. We've got 870 acres, about a mile and a half east of your house, and we hope that we can attract in somebody that actually knows what they're doing. That's a big agribusiness kind of an activity. Takes money, takes know-how, takes skill. But once the crusher's there, all of these seeds, that are leaving the state are going to stay. We're going to save all that transportation money. And that's going to go in somebody's pocket. And I'm thinking it's the farmers. And if there's a meat packing plant, I'm thinking it's the ranchers. That's what's happened everywhere else. I've seen some really nice studies in other states. Crookston, Minnesota, you could start there. The university studied what it's worth, and they said the farmers all make this much more money per bushel because they're saving all this transportation cost.
Absolutely.
It's not rocket science. I'm excited about this. I'm talking a lot, but it's not rocket science. Like, cut all the middlemen out. Who are the middlemen? Well, people transporting stuff for no net gain. Let's cut down on the transportation hauls. Let's keep that local.
Well, it's just crazy to me that we would you have the ability to sell a product direct to consumer here, but you got to ship it somewhere for it to be crushed or ship it to a meat packing plant. And I know you know this. I mean, the meat packers have a monopoly right now, and they're killing ag, especially ranching ag. We had a proposal to do a slaughterhouse here, and I just don't think it was. I think it was a public relations fail. I really do. I'm talking to people who were on the know. It was sold as this 3,000 employee meat packing plant, and that all the meat and produce was going to come ship in from out of state, be slaughtered and shipped out to other places. So it didn't do a lot for the local producer. And so that was kind of a thing. And if they would just, and then I heard what it really was going to be, which was like 1/10 of that. I mean, it was just oversold as something else. And so I think it just got poorly, they didn't like you're trying to do with your government relations person and your communications person. It wasn't properly relayed to the voter to be able to help it. And I don't know where that stands right now. I think it's all in limbo, but I think having slaughterhouse here and also obviously a seed crusher, like you said, I mean, that would make total sense. Because it is. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's renewable energy that I can get behind.
Yeah, and then on the product side, the reason it's going to the West Coast is they pay more, and the way they pay more is the taxpayers get together. The government's got this organized in California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, but they said, all right, our law is going to require that you put a portion of renewables into your fuel tank, whether it's diesel, gasoline, what have you, jet fuel. And in order for that to happen, the government has to pony up the money. So we're always back to follow the money. That's called a low carbon fuel standard. All the West Coast states have it. In the entirety of Canada has it. And Montana's in a great position to be the supplier because pull the map out. Go back to your high school geography class. We have a land border with British Columbia. We have a land border with other Canadian provinces. We touch a rail. Burlington Northern has this great heavy-duty rail capability westbound. Great Falls has a major rail yard, and we get on that right in the refinery. We load the rail cars right out of there. They go off to the West Coast, and money comes back to Montana. That's the kicker. Yeah. And it just has to make sense for all the players. So the thing that's missing is we're buying our feedstocks from out of state, even though they're grown in state. And I know somebody's going to close that loop. We're just trying to get the word out, but that won't be us. Calumet doesn't have any skills about farming. We don't I'd be lucky if I could figure out which end of the cow was the north end. And, somebody else is going to have to provide that. But we've got the land ready. And we've got some right-of-ways that'll connect it right down.
What does that mean, you have the land ready? Like,
So Joe Stanek, I love Joe, but he's getting on, and he doesn't want to keep this 870 acres, and so we've leased it. We have the right to buy it. If something shows up and they say, I don't like the lease, I want you to own it, we will. But 870 acres is a lot of room. And the things that we're envisioning, like a seed crusher,
yeah,
that's not some kind of community nuisance. I mean, I've toured the crushers that belong to the people that specialize in this business. It's a bunch of buildings. What happens is the trucks that haul the seeds out of the farmers' fields are going to bring them here instead of whatever silo they take them to now. Really nothing's going to change, except you won't have the outbound rail and then the feedstock coming back in by rail. It'll all be here in town.
So is it going to take that many acres to build?
No, that's how many we had, so we took them all.
Yeah, exactly. But
it's not that big.
Okay, so yeah, what's the footprint on a seed crusher? I guess it'd be a seed crusher plant.
Yeah, it's it's a building. It's an interesting tour. I mean, I love taking plant tours. I don't care what you do here. I'll take your tour.
Right.
Let me see how you do it. Let me see the know-how. Let me see how the people work. Right. So the trucks come in. It's same trucks you see driving up and down the highway in harvest season and planting season, bringing seeds or bringing materials. But they dump them out. They go in a silo. And they get sorted. They get whatever treatment to get the stems and the twigs and the husks out of them. And then they go in a crusher. And what's a crusher? Well, think of a wine press if you ever wanted to get the idea. You squeeze it, and the oil leaks out, and what's left is the meal. Now you can get fancier and fancier, and you can have more recovery and more treating, but that's the essence of it.
Okay.
Not much to see here. So we'll take the oil from there, and then the meal goes off to the feedlots, which by the way is another incentive.
It's another circle.
Yeah, if you are supplementing your herd, where are you getting that from?
Right.
And the answer is not from Montana. Same problem.
Okay.
No crusher, no meal. So the meal came in from out of state to do the formulation for the critters.
So what type of investment is this crusher plant project? Is this like a multi-million-dollar investment?
Yeah, it is. It depends on the size and if there's some specialized aspects to it. But if we skip that, a lot of these things have been announced. Many of them are up in Canada, not far away. In other words, the local conditions are correct to have these kind of facilities here. It's not like, the rest of them are all in Texas and we got one out here on an island. They're all around.
Right.
Just not here. $60 to $400 million. And that's not the issue. The issue is the know-how.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows how to design this crusher so that it works right? Who knows how to go out to the farm and help the guys with the settings, the air pressure settings on the harvester? The know-how is a big deal. Canada's got most of the canola crop in North America, but there's some here. We can run any oil from any seed: mustard, hemp, camelina. Some of the farmers use camelina for winter cover. I'm told it switches well against wheat for soil, occasional crop rotation. And you look at that and it's like, okay, but that's an oily seed. In fact, it's a great one. And they're plowing it back under. Do me one favor. Harvest those seeds. It's a cash crop now. That's
right.
What's changing.
That's crazy. So talk to me about this. So if we were to have that here, I'm guessing not only would local producers benefit from it and make money from it and not have to transport it out, because once they transport that out, all the money's gone in transportation and that seed crusher, wherever X location it is, because that person who's crushing it's going to make money for the labor doing all that. So they make no money. Basically, what they got to do is they get to get rid of their waste, or they had to pay somebody to get rid of their waste. So they lose money. So I'm guessing not only would local, like the Golden Triangle would benefit from this tremendously financially, but then also people would ship their seeds here to have them crushed. And then that would also, you don't have to worry about seasons. There's no downtime because there's always stuff that could be shipped in year round, have it crushed, which then benefits the biodiesel and keeps it running and sustainable all the time. Is that a correct?
You've got the essence of it. So let's talk about the canola crop. There's, I believe, 14 of these crushers in Canada, mostly due north, Alberta and Saskatchewan. But there's tens of millions of acres cultivated. So 14 crushers is enough to keep the shipping distances down to trucking. Basically the farmers are going to truck to the nearest one. Who owns these things? Well, most of the big ones are large agribusinesses. So people like Cargill, Bunge, ADM, but there are farm co-ops, and we don't care who it is. It's not going to be us because we don't have the know-how and the skills and the qualifications. That's coming from the farm sector.
Yeah.
We've already had a couple of guys reach out to me and say, I understand what you're saying. That makes sense. I'd like to be involved in that. I want to push that along. So this will happen. It'll happen at some scale, sometime reasonably soon, because it makes perfect sense.
That's got to become a game changer for our economy, though.
It is, yeah. But this is where, so come back to, who are we? What are we doing? Has anybody heard of us? And then they listen to this podcast and it's like, wait, what? You're doing what? You're doing it where?
How come we're talking about agriculture the whole time?
Right. So getting the word out, and it has to make sense. If all politics is local, then development is political. There's a group that reflexively opposes any development. They don't even wait to hear what it is. They hear the word development and they get the picket signs. Mm-hmm. The Intermountain region doesn't work that way. We're not on the West Coast here. People actually understand you have to make a living.
Right.
You have to work. You have to be independent. You have to be capable, and those same people should put up their own crusher. Right.
Yeah.
That's really all I'm saying. And the money's not the object. The know-how is, and the connectivity to the acreage is. Now, if you have the same exact conversation for a meat packing plant, we don't care. We can run that too. That's an equally good feedstock. And as you said, let take a restaurant, right? So what is used cooking oil? Well, it's just seed oils that somebody used to boil French fries in. They got to throw it away. How do they throw it away? Well, they call the waste hauling company and they pay them money to make it go.
Yep.
I will pay you money to take it in as feedstock. We've experimented with that. So, it's the short supply chains. It's connecting this all together locally. You go to a restaurant. You ever go to a restaurant where I don't remember the word, but they talk about locally sourcing.
Yep.
And the food critics write it up in the newspaper and say, I'm a locavore. What does that mean? Well, it means I eat stuff that's close to here.
Absolutely.
That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
There's nothing mysterious, and pretty excited about it. Now, until that changes, though, we're bringing in about 20-ish rail cars a day of canola oil, beef tallow, cooking oil, corn oil, and any of these things. They all work for us fine. They're all interchangeable. But that's coming in from out of state, and that money's leaving. That's the money that's leaving Montana. That's being paid to somebody somewhere else. I'm just in favor of that staying home.
Well, and to me, so here's everybody in Montana's fear, right? And I call it the kind of the Yellowstone effect, since that show came out. That show and COVID in concert brought a whole bunch of out-of-state people to Montana. It was weird, though. It actually changed our politics more conservative, which I don't think anybody expected, but I think it was because the type of people that were moving here wanted more liberty. And they were like, okay, we're leaving these places that locked us down, And the interesting, because you talk about how politics are involved in all of this, the fascinating thing I find about this is everybody's fear who's a Montanan here, they're all scared of Bozeman. They don't want to see their community look like Bozeman. So when you get those people who are like anti-development people, that's what they look like. They look at that. Well, people have to remember Bozeman was always its goal. I grew up there. It was always the goal for them to create an Aspen. That was always the vision. And They had like a little Bozeman mafia, and they were wealthy people who wanted to see that happen. Well, if that's your vision from the start, and you have a major university, which is a very, very affluent university as well, and you have all those things, it's easier to get there. It's going to be harder in a blue collar town like Great Falls to get there. But what I like is the things you're talking about. That's the essence of Montana. I mean, if we're talking about a seed crusher that's going to support local agriculture, or a meat packing plant that's going to support local ranch producers, that's all Montana infrastructure and development. That's really true to who we are. So I think that's another thing that's in our corner with a project like this versus, you know, tofu restaurants. That's the only thing I think of.
Yeah, I was going to say fern bars.
Yeah.
No, I completely get it. Look, let's play it out this way, because I think we're talking about three things at the same time, and you have to, but let's name them. So number one, when I say all politics is local, and when I say people are interested or concerned about development, to me what that means is I came here on purpose because I liked the way it was, and I want it to stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of years in Texas. Texas doesn't do zoning. So you can find your perfect ranch setting that you like, and you got the pond that you built, and you put your bass in there, and it's great. And the shopping mall opens up across the street because there's nothing to prevent it. So people get sensitive to that, and I understand it and I get it. The question of where does the money go is the second part of people's interest in growth. Like if you're showing up here as kind of a, I don't know, if you're taking Montana resources, whether that means people's labor, whether it means natural resources, whether it means Montana economic capability in the form of money, and you're pulling it out of state, I think that's a fair issue. I think that should be discussed. Do people want that? If somebody came in and said, "I've added all these jobs, but by the way, all the profits are leaving town. They're not going to stay here. They're not going to contribute to the next development after that." That's a fair discussion. I don't have the answer, and I'm not going to tell people what they should think. I'll simply tell you this refinery's been here 100 years. We've expanded it twice. We're setting it up for the next 100 with this renewable trick. And what I think is that's going to spread through the community. So we got a guy named Professor Pat Barkey. He's signed it. But at the University of Montana, they have an economic model that the government's used to assess things like this. I think the reason governments use it is probably it's independent and neutral and fair. And I said, do me a favor, do a study of what this refinery being here means to Great Falls and means to Montana, and then do it again if we can attract in a seed crusher. And he did that. This is public information. It's on their website. So because this refinery is here right now, 4,000 people can live in Montana. That's the economic activity that stays here, that runs back down through the community. We've only got 300 of those people as direct employees, but they're going to shop on the way home. They're going to go down to the Ford dealer and buy a car, a truck. Their kids are going to go to the schools. You get it.
Right.
It spreads. And that's a lot. My family has a pecan farm in Alabama, and farming's a tough way to go. It's been in our family for generations. It's different than crops. That's a tree. But that is a difficult way to make a living. A lot has to go right. It's expensive. Natural events can affect you. And something that makes that better and raises that up is going to make sense to everybody. This is one of those rare opportunities when there shouldn't be an objector. When we say we'd like to see this, this business go in this direction, we'd like to see somebody else create this crusher. We'll buy the oil from it, which is, by the way, about half of the bushel is going to be oil. The other half's going to be meal. So providing a permanent home at a good price for that cash portion, that brings this whole thing together. Then it all stays here. So he said, well, that'll be 500 more jobs. And those jobs will be right here in Great Falls. So that's what development means to me. It means people have a safe way that they can rely on to make a living. If you don't have that net, if you don't have that ability to withstand, external forces, then you can get run off. And, there's the number of small farms goes down every year. The number of people working in that profession goes down, but the amount of food goes up. So what's that tell you? Well, large scale operations. How do you push against large scale operations? You have really small tactical local niches. So our refinery is one. We're a small business. Calumet has 1,600 employees across the entire country. In the nature of what we do, and if you go look in the Small Business Administration regulations, and you find how that works, we're a small business, capital S, capital B. We go head to head with people like ExxonMobil. That's the real players. Farmers can do the same thing. They know they can. They do it. That's what a farm co-op is. That's because they don't want to give all the money to, I won't use a name, but large agribusiness number 3. They can see that, and they can. Farmers are smart economically, and they'll hang on to that money if there's a way. We're showing the way. So pretty excited about all that.
That is exciting. That's really exciting. So when you said you said a lot right there, but when you said that the professor who did the study said that there'd be 500 more jobs if we had a seed crusher, do you mean that like 500 plus the existing 300 you have at the refinery? Like that was 500 more than that?
Yeah, good question. The number of direct employees at the crusher is going to depend on the size and some couple decisions that those guys would make, whether they want to have the feedlot formulation there or just sell meal to somebody. But the 500, and it was 569 or something, if I remember, that was the local community employment.
Yeah.
So, you got the crush workers, but then you got the guys right outside the fence, same as us at the refinery, that are the dedicated small businesses that, for example, do our maintenance, or we have electrical contractors that are specialists, or the steel pipe guys up the hill.
Yeah.
Those all exist once there's a customer for them.
Right.
So it's just bringing this all together in close proximity. That's the magic.
So like your Low and Bros and those type of businesses,
exactly.
That makes sense. That's kind of how I thought that you were kind of getting at it, and I think that's important. I think people sometimes lose sight in the big scheme of things of how much a business like Calumet can do for your community, and it's not always direct employment. I mean, direct employment, we all want to see, like, the W-2s, who's getting paid by Calumet. I mean, that's the thing. But I mean, I know people, because they contract with Calumet, I mean, their whole, that feeds their whole family. And it's, because they own some small business that they contract, and that feeds their family. That's how they make a living.
Yeah, no, it goes everywhere, which is how the University of Montana and their ability to assess all of those economic ripples, right? So these are like concentric circles that spread out. Some of that money goes up to the state government and comes back down. It's everywhere. But if 4,000 people can live here because we exist, I'm actually kind of proud of that.
That's amazing. And I think it's a good fit for our community too, because this has always been a union blue collar community. It always has. It's starting to get a little bit more. Well, the economy is just starting to grow, so that's starting to not only be its only source, but it's still the basis of everything. So I think that makes it a good fit. Some communities wouldn't tolerate it and be more difficult to work with because of that. But I think, and then also too, I think there's been some key political moves in Cascade County in the past couple of years that I think are really going to change and be more pro-business, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, well, so I agree with that. But I'll tell you a story, short one. So my first real job was in a refinery that was owned by Amoco Oil. They're gone now. The history of the oil industry is people get gobbled up. But that was in Whiting, Indiana. Had been built there in 1889. I was there as a young engineer for the 100th birthday party of that refinery. the 100th birthday party, the one here in Great Falls, was 2022. There's a lot of accomplishment. There's 5 generations of Montanans that have worked in our Great Falls refinery. It's a survivor. Union, yeah, the whole industry is represented by the steelworks. Couple few exceptions. We are too. Call up Mike Sprague, the union president, and ask him what he thinks of us. I think we're okay. But I grew up with that. I kind of take it for granted. Whiting, Indiana, where I had my refinery job, still the best job I ever had. And but it's a company town. That's different. Great Falls is not a company town. Great Falls is a diversified economy. There's a lot going on here, and we have to be a member in good standing of the community if we want to do that for another 100 years.
Right.
You have to keep up. People expect things. People want things. People want you to not do things. I mean, if I pick 60,000 people to round up, there's going to be a lot of voices. But if we sit somewhere on our island and we don't participate in the conversation, they don't know what we're doing. And the first thing they find out about a crusher is they see some buildings going up, and they say, "What's going on?" And these things are happening around me, and I don't know what it means, and I don't know if I should be concerned about it. That's a missed opportunity.
Right. Whether you're into getting fit or staying fit or just having fun with the family, join the Peak Health and Wellness Center today. With 2 great locations in Great Falls, they're here to serve you. If you like weightlifting, functional fitness, or enjoy a wide selection of cardio equipment, the Peak has everything you need. They also offer classes for all ages and fitness levels. The Peak even has a daycare for those busy parents out there. Go check out the Peak today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, 1 cup and 1 bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and the choice for all your construction needs is Builders First Source. They even have an automated home builders solution for all of your construction needs. Go to 826 Northwest Bypass in Great Falls and check them out today. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. You'll be floored. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems of Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems of Montana today. Everybody needs a good insurance plan. Whether it's for home or auto insurance, check out Heinbaugh Agency. Eric Heinbaugh is a local agent focused only on customer service, not sales. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community. And obviously, they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. You're always going to have your naysayer. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how good you're out there doing public relations, talking to the public, being very transparent. You're always going to have naysayers. But I find the more you do, the more you communicate with the public, and you have to make a concerted effort to do it. And sometimes there's days you don't want to, and sometimes there's times you don't want to talk about it, or you don't want to spend. I think this also comes down to, too, it's so hard sometimes, even when you work in a company or you're a leader in an organization, it's so hard to get down in the weeds, to understand it, to be able to explain it in a layman's term to the public so they understand what you're trying to say. Because sometimes things are complex. They're not just, okay, this means this and that means this, and that's where it's going to go. And so I think people get scared off of that, and so they don't talk. They're like, I don't know how to explain it. You know, my wife she kids with me, and she's like, if it takes you longer than a couple words to explain it, it's probably, it's either you're not doing the right thing, or it's not really a good plan. She always has that kind of attitude. And in a lot of ways, she's right. So you kind of have to take big, complex ideas and break them down and say them in a way that, anybody out there can understand them. And they don't have to be in the oil and gas industry to go, oh yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Your wife actually sounds pretty smart.
Oh no, Ben, she's not watching this one.
Don't feed it.
Don't encourage her.
But that's right. So the problem with engineers, and I'm a recovering one at this point, is we love to share the knowledge. Somebody asks a question, and we're like, "Let me tell you how that works." And 2 hours later, I'll wake you up, right? And it's fair. But what we're talking about here is real simple. Number one, people require fuel. Number two, they really, really want that to be affordable, reliable, and clean.
Right.
And all of that's taken for granted. The day it's not working right, you're going to hear plenty. But, that's a basic requirement. The fact that we're going to make some of that fuel out of renewable feedstocks that came from acreage, that's a detail. You really don't need to know about that. This isn't about saving the planet. This is about a for-profit opportunity for a company.
Mm-hmm.
The government incentives make it twice as valuable to use renewable feedstocks as fossil ones. Government wants it that way. They've arranged for it.
Will you talk about that, the whole renewable energy credit system, that whole thing? Can you explain that? Because I don't think people understand that and why it would be beneficial.
Yeah. So this one's interesting. The tapestry is, if you visualize a map of North America, I'm not going to take you anywhere on the map, so just visualize a map, right? But every political geography can, if they want to, make their own regulations for things like this. And many of them have. So on the West Coast, they've all got something called a low carbon fuel standard. Don't need to know what it is, but it says you will use, renewables if you're going to sell products in our state. You figure it out. But the way they do that is they've got kind of a credit tracking system, and if you do use the renewables, you get credit. And you go to the state government in Sacramento, California, and say, "Here's my proof. Give me the money," and they do. So that's direct taxpayer money. The federal government has an ag support. It's called the Blender's Tax Credit. If I make renewable diesel, I can get $1 a gallon for that from the federal government. It's basically Department of Ag. It's intended to make its way into the farmers' hands eventually by having them grow more crops, which we use to make the diesel. And the third one is a lot of individual states, back to these being local things, have got something specific they want to accomplish for their constituents. I'll give you an example. So in Illinois, where there's a lot of soybean grown,
right,
soybean oil would be fine for us. I've told you any of these oils work, but that's not a nearby one. Illinois is a little further away.
Yeah.
So we basically don't run any. We're not using soybean oil today, but Illinois cares about it. So they got a local regulation that favors soybean if you sell the fuel in Illinois. Minnesota has a mandate. You got to use 20% biodiesel in the summer.
Okay.
You figure it out, right?
Right.
But the second you say, here's how it's going to be, the engineers are going to optimize that and deliver that fuel to the customers for the lowest cost, because that's what the customers want. If somebody else can get that fuel into your hands for less money, you ever drive down the road looking up at the stations prices that are all posted up there?
Yeah.
I turn in at the Costco, right?
Right.
That's lower. And
Sam's Club here.
Everybody cares about that.
Yep.
So, it's the engineers compete to reduce cost. The rules are it's got to be clean, and the basic human nature says it's got to be reliable. So we can do all of that. So the state governments line up with different policies for different local constituencies. The federal government lines up with an overall sort of ag sector support in this blender's tax credit. Canada's got another twist on it. That matters. But you get the idea that in North America, there's this tapestry of local and state and federal and they're not all the same, and they're kind of mutually reinforcing. So it's reliable. We consider it reliable. We're expecting those programs to continue. That makes it a good business for us to enter. The Great Falls refinery had the right kind of chemical engineering toys that we could use. We could switch the feedstocks around from crude into these, these acreage derived feeds, and it all works.
Is that why Calumet decided this refinery was the
Yes.
one? I was just going to ask you that, and it had to do with its infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. So this is probably one of the best refineries in the country that you could have converted this way.
And isn't it also true too that Calumet produces like some of the most Jet A fuel in the country is produced right here?
As a percentage, it is, yeah.
Wow.
And the asphalt, the crude oil that we get, which is kind of a local one, it's Canadian, but it's the formation crosses the border. Some of the best asphalt on the planet. We ship the asphalt all over the place. Other people need the high quality asphalt. The part of that stays local, you just have better roads than other people. If it's if it's asphalt paved road. So it's a really good niche. When I use the word niche, I mean for a lot of local reasons. We're a small refinery, but we're a strong survivor and have been for a long time, and we're going to keep that going with the connection to this energy transition and the renewable feedstocks instead of the fossil ones.
So one of the other things I heard too was, how many refineries does Calumet own?
We've got 2 crude oil refineries that make fuels. That's it, and they're both little.
But I also, this is something someone explained to me, and this I've been wanting to ask you this directly. With the biodiesel credit that you get from the federal government in different states for being a renewable, does that help offset cost on your crude oil refineries that probably get dinged a little bit because they don't have a renewable?
Yeah, it does. There's another federal program. This is an EPA one.
Yep.
So this does not go on the credit side of the ledger.
It's going to cost you money.
There you go. But there are EPA requirements that we have to meet. The petroleum refining is a heavily regulated business. The products we make are heavily regulated qualities. Have to do all kinds of things, and it is going to allow us to have an overall collective lower cost operation to have the renewables in. That's an EPA program called the Renewable Volume Obligation.
Okay.
If somebody cares, let them call in on the expert line afterwards.
Okay.
Because otherwise, my guidance is if you hear the word renewable volume obligation, just run screaming from the room.
Right.
You'll be better off.
Right.
It's a hairball of a compliance mechanic.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. It's fascinating to me. I mean, there's a couple things that I do admire about your company that I think is really unique. Is I always love it when businesses know how to pivot with different governments, because the government is ever changing, politics are ever changing, and we see it all the time. When the White House changes over their vision, I mean, we saw that with the XL pipeline. When Trump was in office, that was a full go, no stop, and the day Biden gets in there, it's an executive order and it's dead. And so we see all this stuff with energy, and everyone knows that national security is energy, security. If you can secure your energy, then you have national security. And so one of the things that I wanted to kind of dive a little deep in with Calumet and you on is let's say Trump wins the election and he does away with credits for biodiesel. He's like, psh, from a federal level. I realize states would have their, rights of states to do their own thing. And let's say it was no longer feasible for Calumet to be in the biodiesel business. Now, everything that you've told me tells me that it's very sustainable and it wouldn't matter who it was. That's the vision I'm getting from this. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. Because if we were able to get a seed crusher, if we were able to have a meat packing plant, if we're any combination of those, we could close the loop, so to speak. But let's just say, so first of all, I guess first part of the question, is that correct? And then the second part of the question would be, how could you convert back to crude oil?
Yeah, we can convert back to crude oil. That's the magic. One of the things that we liked about this refinery in Great Falls and the conversion was we kept the crude oil going. We rearranged a lot. It cost us more to do that, but if we have to switch back to crude oil, that's the easy button.
Okay.
And so we feel like we're safer in that scenario where there's a substantive change in the political landscape, in the rules. What I would tell you, though, is until that change happens in the whole world, it's not going to matter,
Right.
because oil prices are linked up globally, and the West Coast states are going to continue to act independently. They're paying for this. They wanted it that way. And if the federal support, this thing that you're referring to, if you imagine that changed, okay, well, then the states are going to have to pick up the slack. And when you look at the data, when you look backwards and say, how's this been going? That's exactly what happens. If one of the pieces of support is a little weaker this year for whatever reasons, one of the other pieces strengthens and picks it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's kind of self-stabilizing. We're pretty comfortable with that.
But
So the snarky one-liner is, if the future Republican governor of California says this is bull, I'm canceling this program, it's not going to matter. I think that's probably the same answer I would give you at the federal level.
okay, that's where I was going. And then my first part of my question, because I gave you a compound, I was like a defense attorney. I was giving you compound questions. But the way you've explained it to me, the biodiesel program is pretty resistant to any political change because it has to do more with supporting the local economy. And there'll always be states out there that are going to have that incentive, that credit, where they're going to pay for the renewable. So you're just going to ship it out and bring the money back to Montana regardless. So
Yeah,
it
and
seems like that makes sense.
It's exactly right. And all you're arguing is, where did we ship it? And I don't care.
Who cares?
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
shipping it to the highest value market. That's the way a business person will think about it.
Well, if the money comes back, I think you said it earlier, right? It's when the product leaves, and so does the money. That's kind of
that's the what's in it for me problem, right?
Mhm.
And if a person that proposes the thing can't answer that for the local people, then why should they expect to get any support?
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't either. The whipsaw is, the election cycle. The pendulum seems to get more amplified, right? So we kind of bang this side and then we go bang the other side. But the underlying policy intentions, where they are bipartisan, those have survived all of that stuff. So let's play a game with the blender's tax credit for a second. I won't swear to this, but I'm pretty sure that it was brought onto the federal books about 2007 or so, something in that time frame. So it's been kicking around for 15 years. It's never not been enforced. Sorry for the double negative.
Nope.
Sometimes the government gets around to their paperwork in arrears. That can be a problem. Like they didn't reinstate it this year. Am I going to get the money? Am I not going to get the money? But it's never not happened. Sometimes it's happened late.
Right.
We can have a discussion about the federal government and speed if you want to, but
yeah. Well,
but it becomes
I already know that.
It becomes reliable. It's bipartisan, and I got to thank a federal candidate running for office who says, I'm going to blow all that up, probably just touched the third rail and fried themselves to a crisp.
Right.
Because why is that there? That is slowing down the exit of family farms. That is raising the price of farm produce and crops. Raise your hand if you're opposed to those two things.
So say that again.
So let me do that the other way around. If you grow a crop that can be used to make diesel, and that technology's been around for a century, biodiesel. If you grow a crop that can be used for that, and the government says, and if you do, I'm going to give you an extra $1 a gallon for the oil part, that's going to show up in the crop price. It's going to show up as support. And as soon as you say that, what you should see is that the government has arranged through their fuel policy, the way they tax fuel, for that money to support production by farmers. And that's the policy intent. That's what makes it bipartisan. Up until it may change this year, don't ask me what they're up to because I claim no insights. But if the Democrats don't do the Iowa first, it'll be the first time. And you're standing in the heartland and you're talking to farmers and you're saying, I'm going to take away this support. Good luck to you.
Right.
That'd be my assessment of that.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And you think about how, especially right now, how fragile our food is right now. I mean, in my lifetime, I've never seen our food production be so fragile. I mean, we're in a bad place with all that. And I think going back to your getting message out, getting the message out of what Calumet's doing for the community, your company is literally helping support and wants to grow farming in our area. I mean, literally make it more.
It's that simple. It's that simple. And I agree with you. There are a couple of national systems that everybody counts on, takes for granted, and don't even realize if they're at risk and how much. The delivery of food so that you can bring it home that day and eat, that depends on a lot of things. Flipping the light switch in your house and having it go on, same thing. Firing up the gas if it's cold out, same thing.
Right.
Going and fueling your vehicle at the retail station, same thing. These are different systems, different, sort of large national grids, but they're all at risk. And the warning signs are out there, the strains are out there. Senator Daines ran something called the Montana Energy Summit maybe 2 years ago. And he asked me to come down and talk to people, and I told him the same thing I'm going to tell you right now. You got to be very, very careful if you're going to touch an efficiently functioning national grid and change it. First, do no harm.
Right.
You got to be very careful of that. And, I happened to be in San Antonio, Texas 2 years ago. They got a freak winter storm, iced everything over for 4 days. They own zero snow clearing stuff down there. There's nothing they can do. You got to wait for a warm day for it to melt. It's literally that simple. So in 4 days of no trucks bringing no supplies, the supermarkets were stripped bare. There was no food. It happens that fast.
Yes, it does.
Now, that's an example of a freak winter storm, but you've been warned about disrupting the supply chain. What's the supply chain? Well, it starts where people grow, then it moves from there to where that raw produce is processed. We've talked about crusher a lot. It gets moved again, so again, trucks and rail, to a point of sale. And the point of sale for a business like me would be, please deliver a rail car of canola oil to my refinery. I'm going to, make fuel from it. Same point of sale for somebody that's baking is, I'm going to go down to the supermarket. I'm going to buy that same canola oil. It's going to be in a little quart bottle. It's going to cost a lot more by then. But, all of that gets interrupted pretty easily.
Oh, very
so
easy.
here's the kicker, and this is a personal opinion, so don't attach this to the company, but are you effing kidding me that heavy-duty trucks have to be all electric 6 years from today?
Yeah, no.
Have you driven from Bozeman to Missoula?
Yeah, exactly. In the winter.
And is that trucker going to stop for 6 hours to recharge his battery twice along the way?
Right, when the trip isn't even 6 hours.
Yeah, good luck to you.
No,
so this is the first do no harm thing comes to mind. It's, if I said that the other way, I'd say I don't believe in putting people in charge of stuff they don't understand.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand these very intricate national grids, whether you call them trucking logistics over the highway system, whether you call it how does the food get to your table, whether you call it fuel, whether you call it electricity, please stop changing stuff.
Absolutely.
Give us the new instructions. The engineers will figure out an effective way to do it that also remains reliable and also remains clean. But you start ordering this stuff up from some academic desk somewhere, you'll be sitting with me in San Antonio wondering what you're going to eat tonight because there isn't anything. Don't think it can't happen. It already did. I was there.
Or you're going to drive the cost so far through the roof that people can't afford it.
And then you come to the inflation. What is the price of this vanity?
Right.
And who can bear it? So some of the things we're talking about are actually regressive. They're going to fall heavily on the poorer portion of our population. Large, wealthy cities can afford these indulgences. And if they're willing to pay for everybody else's, fine. Let's all have flying taxis powered by sunshine.
Right.
But I'm not getting in the first one.
Exactly.
And I'm an engineer, and I've been doing this a long, long time. I'm gonna let somebody else iron out the kinks of that.
Well, I just think about how much is already being done. So here's, and one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on is I remember when my first gut reaction when it was, well, Calumet's going renewable, and I was like, oh my gosh, what kind of government pressure got to them to make them do this, and what's going on, and oh no, was this gonna? And so I was uneducated about it. So I started to ask a lot of questions. I was like, what does this mean? But my bias was towards, oh, they're going to electric cars, so they're going to go to, but I had no idea about what it did for the local communities, what it does for local. I had no idea because unfortunately your company didn't do a really good job of like expressing that, like really getting that out. But I feel like if you're in a position of leadership, you go ask questions to find the information. You don't assume or just say, well, I don't know. You go find the information. That's what you're supposed to. So I went out and started talking to people, and it was fascinating. And I'm going, wait a second. Why isn't this the model for every single refinery in any area where there's agriculture? Because this is a real thing. This is a renewable. This is like you said, you're creating a closed loop on things. Everybody's getting paid for it. Everybody's making money. Everybody's doing well. You're creating its own economy within its economy. You're also making it more reliable. You're also making sure the lights go on. You're also making sure that people have food. And so that's what I was like. And I was like, that is so fascinating. But yet, we haven't even accomplished this mission yet. And I mean, we as a society, we haven't accomplished this renewable thing and really got the message out and really got people excited, really got people behind it, got people like going, this is the future. This is the way. Let's go. We haven't done that. And so now we're jumping from that to artificial intelligence and electric cars. And we're saying, no, this is the future. And it's like this, ADD government on crack, trying to find the next whiz bang thing that's going to make things. How did you say it? You said you had a good word here just a minute ago. It's like a virtue signal. There's nothing behind it.
Yeah. So so I agree that there is I don't know if you want to call it a pent-up demand or if you just want to call it some of the loudest voices, but we hear an awful lot. Everybody does. I mean, if you're paying attention, you're going through life and you keep picking this stuff up. I demand change. I demand it now. And the person doing the demanding doesn't understand the issues anyway. And so the way that's played out is gridlock. And the response to gridlock with continuing pressure is legal action. So now the only way to advance any of these balls is through the court system. And, if you like that kind of a society, you're probably satisfied. If you think that's a terrible waste of resources and capable people doing something that, then you're probably not satisfied. So here's a story. We should be the poster child for the way forward. We took a 30,000 barrel a day refinery. That's tiny. The biggest ones in the country are 20 times that size. They have huge advantages. They have economies of scale. They have all kinds of stuff. But we're here. We're scrappy. We're still doing it. We took that tiny refinery and made half of it renewable, and we're putting out the same amount of gasoline and diesel that we put out before. That's pretty good, because the other people that have tried this have lost 3/4 of their output. So there's a couple things we're doing that are very unique. The federal government likes it. The Department of Energy is trying to figure out how to help us. We have a patent application pending. I mean, we think we found the better way, to your point. And we needed one little something technical. So I mentioned 20 rail cars a day bringing in our feedstocks, and some of those are rendered products off the back end of a meat packing plant. So I got a car of tallow. Well, if you cook the way I do, you take those pan drippings and you dump them in a can and you put it back in the fridge.
Right.
What do you see when you pull that can out of the fridge and you look in it? And, the answer is it's a solid.
Yeah.
And so I got a rail car full of a solid. I need to get it out of there. No problem. The engineers knew about that. The car has a steam coil. We connect up some steam. We warm it up. Tallow gets melted. We pull it out. We make, sustainable aviation fuel. It's great. But I can only heat these cars so fast. So we realized we have an innovation here. It's a learning curve. I need a little package boiler. It's going to make more steam so I can have more cars unloaded faster. It's good for everybody. Apply to the DEQ for permit for this package boiler. Totally, if you talk to a lawyer, you'll hear the phrase de minimis. It means tiny, inconsequential, nothing to see here. It doesn't matter. It took about 4 days to get a 7-page letter from some lawyer in Oregon who went on and on and on and to address to the DEQ, said, I've seen this public application for a permit to have this package boiler. The package boiler is going to be fired by diesel fuel. Diesel fuel is destroying the environment. I see this held decision in the state court, and I will haul you in front of the judge and hold you in contempt of court if you issue this permit to Calumet. So the lawyer in Oregon didn't bother to find out what we do here. We've reduced CO2 emissions 99% on the renewable side. And then we said, oh, wait, I need this little boiler. I guess I've only reduced them 98.5%. And he wants to shut it down. That's the issue that I would identify. Please show up informed if you want to participate in the conversation.
Well, absolutely, but there's ideology too. There's people that are like looking at a refinery, and their ideology says bad for the environment, dangerous,
Yeah, in my example,
arguments.
Absolutely. In my example, it wasn't even true.
Right.
But if Montana wants to be governed by lawyers from Oregon, we'll see how long it takes to wind up there.
Yeah.
But you're kind of at the tipping point, right? So once let's see if I get my facts straight on this. So Steve Daines was running against Steve Bullock a few years ago. And on a per capita basis, I read that was the most expensive senatorial election ever in the history of the world.
Yeah,
and you say, but there's 1 million people here. How can that be? And the answer is no problem. Several $100 million came flowing in from out of state to influence this election in this state. Yeah. So once you realize that's how it works now, and whether we're talking about some lawyer from Oregon that wants to block renewable fuel processing, I mean, my head is still spinning on that one.
And it's going to happen again this year.
Yeah,
with Sheehy and Tester.
No, it'll
be the most expensive one again.
It's going to keep going.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? So I'm going to pull out of the issues, and whether it's left, right, or the pendulum back and forth, I'm going to say a lot of people care a great deal about keeping their life, their local environment, their happy spot, keeping it the way it is. Mm-hmm. And if you're threatened by the other guy and you think he's going to screw it up for you, you will open your pocketbook and you will help keep it the way you want it. Now, the problem is I don't see very many elections decided 100% to zero.
Correct.
So we can't speak with a common voice. The art is find the common ground. Mm-hmm. It's going to be an overlap. You and I won't agree on some things, and it'll be like left, no, right. And I don't mean that politically. So I'll say, I wanted A, and you're like, no, I wanted B. But you know what? But right here where those touch, we could at least agree to, pave the parking lot next week. Let's at least pave the parking lot.
Absolutely.
So when people talk to each other, we can calm ourselves down from this cable news level of the debate. Mm-hmm. We can find the common ground. And as soon as you find it, you can stand on it. That's never been the problem. Absolutely. And so there is, for example, in our business, bipartisan support for things that affect us. And we talked about the blender's tax credit and the benefits to farmers, and why that's going to continue, in our opinion. But there's a lot more to it. And if somebody said all I care about is I'm retired, I want to enjoy tranquility, I'm going to change to a non-Montana example. I lived in Chicago early in my career. Major airport there, O'Hare. A lot of people have at least changed a plane there, if no other reason. So a bunch of homeowners decide to sue the government because they don't want the planes to operate because it's noisy. And I'm like, the airport was there first. You bought that house. You knew that. You don't get to come in and make that change. Now, if the airport said, we've decided to triple our size and build 10 new runways, that's a fair fight. But you don't get to reverse it, And so the example I would give you there, and I'm gonna leave out the details and the color, but if somebody comes in and says, basically I don't trust the federal government, I don't trust this agency to administer something, I'm going to step in, I'm going to assert police powers, I'm going to watch this myself. And you're looking at a private person and you're thinking you're not trained, you're not experienced, you're not qualified. No, just no. We don't do vigilantism here. We're not going to have people saying, I'm in charge. We're going to have institutions do that. So that's really fundamental. But it's kind of at odds with what I would argue is libertarian. So if you get really deep into politics here, Montana is not Democrat nor Republican. Everybody here is libertarian. Absolutely. What does that mean? It means you're independent, you're self-reliant. You will help your neighbor when you see that that's necessary. Small government comes with, and we don't need to be mandated electric trucks by Washington D.C. It won't work here.
You are so spot on. It's funny. I was always trying to figure it out. Like, where does Montana really stand? Because we would be a wildly conservative state, but at one point, almost all of our leaders or governors or senators, everybody was Democrat. It was weird. I mean, they weren't all. There was a couple that were Republicans, but it was odd. It was a very odd culture we had for a while. And then in 2020, when COVID hit and everything, the libertarian thing was set in very much here. And you saw it when we passed super deregulation of gun laws, like constitutional carry. And then on the very same election cycle, we had recreational marijuana. And you were like, and we're the only state that does that. If you go across the board and you look at a state that has open gun laws, like constitutional carry, they're not banning anything. Its Second Amendment is alive and well, like it is in this state. None of those states have recreational marijuana, like not one. Some of them may have medical marijuana, but they don't have recreational. And so right when I saw those two things collide in the same year, I was like, oh yeah, that we have planted a libertarian flag in Montana.
when you feel the ground shifting, that's when more conversations and more knowledge is helpful.
Absolutely.
And you're gonna have potentially 4 purple cities here and a bunch of red counties. I mean, this can go lots of different ways. Pull the county level electoral map of the U.S., but focus on the West Coast. You get this narrow blue strip on the water. Everybody not living on the water is a farmer, and they're all red. It's just a fascinating thing to think about. Didn't look that way if I did that every 10 years for the last century. I'm sure it's moving around and it's dynamic. And that just tells you, plan to live with change. But harnessing change locally, I'm in favor of the local people having the louder voice there.
Right.
I'm not in favor of change being imposed from outside. I'm in favor of self-steering.
Our Constitution was never intended for that to occur.
Yeah. I agree with that.
If we're able to ever get rid of this deep state that we have at the federal level, it will go back to that. That's what's the thing that's corrupting us a little bit. I want to go back to Calumet real quick here because I wanted to touch on this. Something else that I learned when I was doing my research that really fascinated me was you guys end up with like a water waste product that you have to rail car out of here.
Oh yeah,
actual water.
More craziness.
So talk about that, because I know that there's some local government changes that can help fix that issue.
Yeah. So I'll give you 3 thoughts. First of all, yes, if you begin with an agricultural product, which we do, you will at some point in its life wash that thing. I kind of like to bake. So my reference to the supermarket shelf, and you walk down and you find all these, there's the canola oil, there's the soy oil, you can get safflower oil, there's all kinds of things there. They all got grown, but they all got washed.
Okay.
And so, the fact that we're doing it here is a detail of where it got washed, but the world is washing these crops everywhere, every day. Now, the crude oil refinery, which is the 100-year-old one, uses some water. That water is treated by the refinery. It's then handed off. The water is handed off to the city's plant for final treatment and discharge into the Missouri River. So if you think about that, that's touching probably more than one third rail. It's touching a third and a fourth and a fifth rail, because you can say crude oil, and you can say refinery, and you can say river. And that's safe, that's reliable, that's heavily regulated. There's permits, everybody complies with everything. And then you move over to this agricultural water. So we've built the processing capabilities. We use the water, we wash the crop-derived materials. And what do we have? Well, we have water that's different than the crude oil water.
Okay.
How is it different? Well, it's got nutrients. Boil some ears of corn. I microwave mine because I'm lazy, okay, because I get it done in 5 minutes. But boil the ears of corn, wait the 45 minutes, look at the water in the pot. That's what we're talking about. Now, in the history of the world, that went straight, dumped out on the ground, or dumped back into the creek. What's changed, and it's changed everywhere, and I support this, and I think it's good, is that the standards are higher. The oversight, the permits, the compliance activities, the federal government's role are all very, very tight. And that goes back to the Clean Water Act in 1970, if I'm not mistaken. We can talk about that if you want. But so now we've got this water. It's benign. It's non-hazardous. Absolutely not hazardous. But it's got to go somewhere. We can't just pour it in the creek. That's not how the world works. Hasn't been since 1970. So we're going to go ahead and build a water treating plant like our other water treating plant that we have on the crude oil side.
Okay.
Different water, different plant. Not a big deal, but we don't have it done yet. That will let us tie into the city. So that's the long-term game. Meanwhile, we haul it off to all of the other people all around the country that already know how to make this same kind of water go away.
So what's your hurdle on that? Is it just time, or do you guys?
It's just time.
Is it? You don't have
we have an engineering design and a cost estimate. We're talking to the city of Great Falls, because the connection between our new treatment plant that we'll have and their existing one needs to be comfortable and agreeable for everybody. So we've had a bunch of environmental water specialists doing a bunch of studies about. They use the word treatability. It just means if I start with this water and I need to hit this spec, what do you do? Well, you perform the following treatment steps. If you never, and I don't know if Great Falls offers this, but if you've never taken a tour of a wastewater treatment plant run by a city, take one.
I had to.
There's a lot going on there.
I used to be, before I was sheriff, I was a city cop, and so part of our orientation is we had to go through all those buildings. So yeah, it was kind of neat.
No, there's a lot of things happening, and you want to, same thing I told you 15 minutes ago in a different context. Do not disturb that thoughtlessly. If you're going to make a change, make it really deliberately. Approach it carefully. Make sure there's buy-in. And so we've been working on that for a while. I think we're probably just about there. Meanwhile, we ship this stuff out of state. We pay the railroad to make it go to somebody else's facility. Back to keeping the money in Montana.
Right. Because that's money going out, because it's not free to ship that.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's probably costing a pretty penny to do that.
It is, yeah. I mean, the railroads are making more money from this business than we are.
Whether you're into getting fit or staying fit or just having fun with the family, join the Peak Health and Wellness Center today. With 2 great locations in Great Falls, they're here to serve you. If you like weightlifting, functional fitness, or enjoy a wide selection of cardio equipment, the Peak has everything you need. They also offer classes for all ages and fitness levels. The Peak even has a daycare for those busy parents out there. Go check out the Peak today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, one cup and one bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and the choice for all your construction needs is Builders First Source. They even have an automated home builders solution for all of your construction needs. Go to 826 Northwest Bypass in Great Falls and check them out today. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. You'll be floored. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems of Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems of Montana today. Everybody needs a good insurance plan. Whether it's for home or auto insurance, check out Heinbaugh Agency. Eric Heinbaugh is a local agent focused only on customer service, not sales. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community. And obviously, they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. So one of the things, and this is, I'm a dreamer, so I have harebrained ideas. So bear with me. One of the things that I learned that was really fascinating was when, during the whole 2020, 2021, kind of into 2022 supply chain disruption, one of the big issues that we had here in Montana was, I think it was 2022, summer of 2022. I believe that's correct. I'm almost positive. We have massive supply chain disruptions still, and we got hit with a huge bad fire season. And Cascade County doesn't have a lot of national forest, so when we get hit, it's a big deal. And we had two very large active forest fires in two totally different locations, so it was a lot of logistics. And what we learned was, we had our wildland firefighters out there just crushing it, doing the best they could, but we weren't seeing the planes. We weren't getting any planes flying over and dumping water, and we were like, what's going on? Well, come to find out of Helena is where they all fly out of. There was nobody to drive the trucks. There weren't people to drive the trucks to bring the fuel to the planes, to fuel the planes, to get them in the air. So that was our supply chain disruption. And I happened to be watching late night news or something like national news one night, which I never watch. And they were talking about how in Washington, they weren't having that issue. And they were flying out of SeaTac. And SeaTac, because they had the same amount of forest fires we had. And we were getting our planes, some of them diverted to Washington at this time. Well, what it was BP direct pipes their fuel into SeaTac. So they got to pay for it, but they turn on a nozzle and fuel's coming. There's no trucking issue. So it created, and I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, that would be an amazing thing to do here, because if you were able to do that with having Calumet here locally, and maybe here isn't the right one, maybe you have a refinery that's closer to an airport that I'm not even thinking of, but if you could pipeline Jet A fuel into it, my thought was wildland fire and all that service would go to the airport and say, no, because it's only 80 miles, we're going to base out of here because we know there's a reliable fuel source at all times feeding our planes. Therefore, we're good to go.
Yeah, I would say you have the whole thing figured out. So let's just stay local for a second. So there's three airfields here. Two of them are at the commercial one. So it's the commercial planes and the Montana Air National Guard. It's 3 miles away. If there was a reason to have a pipeline, we're happy to put the pipeline in. That's trucked up now, but that's a local trucking. The other one, of course, is going the other way to the rotary wing. The rotary wing guys left at Malmstrom. That hasn't been an issue locally, but all of the rest of the airports in Montana are truck fed also. And there's only two places to pick up the jet fuel, from us in Great Falls or from any of the three guys in Billings. You want jet in Bozeman, Helena, Missoula, I can keep going.
You got to get it there.
So now I need a longer haul truck, and that guy's like, that's great, but you want me to drive from Billings to, the airport code at Kalispell is FCA. So how long is that going to take? Because he's got to pick his way through the mountains, and I don't know. I'll just make this up and say that feels like a 12-hour drive to me.
In a truck?
In a truck, yeah,
Absolutely.
right? So think about, you've been through that pass and, going through Glacier. So then he's got to get back.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't need that. There's a shortage of trucks in the country. I'm not signing on for 3 days away from home for my 12-hour each way, and I got to overnight somewhere trip. And so then you start to have the efficient national system bogged down. That's another warning shot. You've got your warning shot about distribution of fuels now. So the more you keep stuff local, see, I started in a refining industry that had 300 refineries. This is a while ago.
Okay.
But there were 300 refineries running in the country the year I started out of school. There's about 115 today. One by one, they're dying. The total amount of crude running has not gone down. Exact same story as the farm space. The small guys get squeezed out. The larger ones consolidate and extend their reach. The amount of fuel for the country is the same. But if you live in Cascade County, you don't need to know about that because this refinery has kept you happily fed with fuel, the whole time. But imagine we're not here. Just imagine for a second we weren't. And there was 114 left instead of 115. Where's the next one that's going to bring you the fuel? And then you won't only have the fire season peak load jet problem and no trucks. You can have every fuel problem. Same thing.
So what you're saying is, if you have an airport in your community, you probably should have a refinery.
You probably ought to make sure you know how that airport fueled the plane.
Right.
Now, because most of the stuff out of here short haul, the answer is United can just double load it in Denver, okay?
Right.
And it'll just come up here with too much fuel and it'll be able to get out. But that doesn't work for the firefighting planes.
Right.
So they're dumping water or they're dumping that orange stuff.
Yeah.
You win firefighting when that plane can dump 6 loads today, not 2 a week, because he had to go somewhere else.
Right.
And the more you think about that, the more you think about how everything's connected to everything. And this is a great conversation, but look what we're doing.
Right.
We're finding all of the touch points of all of these things we're talking about, which means you can't just reach in and say, I'm a lawyer from Oregon, you can't have your permit or else.
Right.
It's like, dude, it's the energy transition. It's not the energy shutdown.
Yes.
If you shut it down and say, we don't want that one anymore and we're going to have a new one instead, good luck to you. You're not going to like how that plays out.
It's the inverse argument of the electric car, right? Everyone wants the electric car. And they're like, oh, it's better for the environment, except for how they mine the cobalt and what they do with the batteries when the car dies. Or when you see these cars getting crashes and, the fire department's on.
Can't put it out because they don't have the D-class extinguisher.
12 hours, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the people assume that if they order it up, that somebody like me will know how to do it correctly, safely, clean, reliable, and cheap. That's an assumption. It doesn't work that way. Elon Musk has been wandering in the wilderness a long time before the electric car actually became successful. There is a huge amount of money and development and mistakes and missed chances and casualties. The driverless steering, that's not working so good. I don't know what the body count is, but it's definitely in the double digits. Because I notice those when they get reported. Most of the cars I rent when I come in here have got these days, some kind of automatic steering. start drifting over the side of the lane,
Right.
the steering wheel's going to tug you back. How well is that road painted its entire length?
Right.
Is it raining that day?
Yeah.
I mean, you ever been out on the highway when you couldn't tell where the lines were
Oh yeah.
because the water cover was just exactly wrong and the light was coming off it?
Or the snow.
Yeah, so it's a long, slow haul, and you don't just order fossil to turn off.
Right.
Well, or order away, and then I'm going to say you deserve what you get, but we won't do it.
Well, and I think it's responsible. Go full circle back to our very beginning of our conversation. It's very responsible to have renewable energy. Very responsible, because you can't, like you said, there fossil fuels. It took millions of years for it to get there. Don't deplete it. Don't go in and drill. I mean, I have no problem with drilling. It doesn't bother me. But I mean, do both. Do both and build up huge oil reserves, build up huge reserves of fuel so you have it, you know, and do it responsibly so you're energy independent. I mean, they both can work together. They don't need to be separate. I mean, it's like when I was in, you know, when I was a young man and I slept through everything, you know, I had an alarm, but then I also had an alarm that was battery operated.
You had to back up, yeah.
So if the power went out, I woke up on time, and that was two different forms of energy to make sure that I was on time. Why, I don't know why we don't think like that as a community.
Well, we should. That's a portfolio. It means there's more than one way to meet the need, because if something happens to the first way, you got the other one or the one beyond that. You know, it evolves. It takes time for it to evolve. And you'd like the evolution to not be disruptive or damaging. So for all those reasons, I mean, just take us. We had the idea to take part of our refinery and switch to feedstock. Feedstock just means instead of crude oil, I'm buying these ag products. Took us 4 years, probably. Think that through, engineer it, build it, and that took 3. And the fourth one was learning how this was just subtly different, and finding a couple of teething problems. It's like, oh, didn't expect that. It probably shouldn't have happened. Let's deal with that. And you learn your way up. You ever buy a new car and it's just annoying because the controls aren't in the right places for the first month till you learn it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, there's a lot going on with change, and the higher the stakes in terms of, people or impact, the more thought and care you should take. And simply, barking out executive orders that shut down chunks of the existing energy supply without an available alternative.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Hugely irresponsible. Hugely.
Yeah. So Montana is going to have to find a path through those externalities, those things that are happening around us. But the idea that you can wave a magic wand and have a bunch of electric trucks here is ludicrous.
It is.
It's too cold. The hauls are too long. The recharge times aren't good. And then you come to, where did those battery components get mined?
Yep. Well, and the weight. They're from what I understand, they're quite a bit heavier.
Oh, the energy efficiency is terrible. So there's a little swindle going on now, and you can research this yourself. And I choose that word deliberately. So the EPA has assigned fuel economy targets to the automakers, but they get zero. They get assigned a zero hit for an electric, right? So it's like there's no carbon emissions associated with electric. Really? Where'd you get the electricity?
Right.
That's not even remotely reasonable. But if you don't do that, you're not dragging the automakers in the direction that somebody wants them to go.
Doesn't fit.
So it's like, here's the carrot. If you make electric cars, we won't tag you for their emissions. Even though there are some, we'll just pretend like there's not.
Well, it's like the wind turbines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those things are pumped full of oil.
Yeah, they are.
They're hydraulic. They've got oil running up and down them the whole time.
Yeah, they are.
Oil to run the
one of our companies makes that oil. That's a really specialized lubricant. Look, I said much earlier today, I'm a conservationist at heart. I grew up that way. I have those affinities. I'm actually interested in birds, and I'm particularly interested in raptors. Google for yourself What is the annual raptor death count from wind turbines?
Oh, it's got to be huge.
No, it's tens of thousands.
Right.
Because they get hit and they get killed. And they find them at the base of the tower. And the honest companies are reporting those finds. So the number, any number that you've got is a lower bound, right? So you take all that and say, right, what would happen if you were a rancher and you whipped out the long gun and you took a few golden eagles down or a few bald eagles? Tell me what happens to you
Yeah.
in the court of law.
Oh, yeah. It's a federal offense.
So I have trouble reconciling different treatment for different circumstances.
Absolutely.
And I'm not in favor of windmills chopping up raptors.
Yeah.
I'm just not.
Absolutely.
And, so you keep going. And let's call that the law of unintended consequences. Because the first guy to say, let's have a windmill, didn't say, and I hope everybody looks the other way when I kill a bunch of birds. He didn't say that because he didn't think it.
No.
That was an unintended consequence. Now what?
Yeah.
So that's how engineering sciences advance.
But just be honest. I mean, just one, be honest about it. And then two, acknowledge that it has an environmental impact that does things just like gas and oil could have an environmental impact that could harm things. I mean, everything does. I mean, just human beings.
Everything is trade-offs.
Well, and just human beings being on the planet as intelligent as we are. When we build these homes and these subdivisions, we destroy their habitat. I mean, we do all the time. It's why we all complain, well, there's a grizzly bear in our backyard. There's never been before. No, because we keep growing into their habitat. I mean, but we never want to just acknowledge the truth that it's just the way it is. And we don't need to panic and have radical solutions to it. It's little incremental things that we can think about. Call your local FWP, have them trap the bear. They relocate the bear.
Put a tag on him. If he gets too many tags, they're going to have to take him further.
Yeah.
But that's the learning curve. And what we're really saying is give it time to evolve so that we do no harm along the way.
Right.
The more dramatic the change and the faster you demand it be done, the more we're going to be going, man, yeah, I wish I'd seen that coming. Sorry about that.
Well, look at, I mean, a perfect example that's very close to all of us in our memory was the COVID vaccine thing. They rushed the COVID vaccine. They pushed it out to stop the panic. And then they had some horrible side effects. They had some people die from it. They had some bad things happen. And they rushed it. It usually takes, 10 years or something to do something like that?
The FDA is very deliberate about approving new medications, except in this instance.
Exactly. And it's a perfect example that we should all look at.
Look, nobody has perfect foresight. Nobody's omniscient. And the way that we move this forward is going to be the magic, by working together to understand each other, to talk about what this would mean, to have somebody say, yeah, but what about? And, the more polarized the politics are, the easier it is to say, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to talk to you about that ridiculous thing you just said. And 5 years later, if they happen to have been right, that was a missed chance. So I like listening to everybody. At the end of the day, there are some scientific truths that you can't change. If the EPA gives me a rule tomorrow to repeal the second law of thermodynamics, I'm not even going to try. It can't be done. It can't happen. It won't happen.
They might do that.
They might do that, and that's the point that we've arrived at.
Yeah.
But if you give it more time and you say it wasn't about ordering you to repeal the second law of thermodynamics, where I wanted to wind up was over here, then the engineers will be like, well, the way you told us to do it doesn't work, but I think I can see another way.
Right.
And then you start involving the creativity and the smarts and the knowledge. Like if I had to go grow my own food, I wouldn't have a varied diet. I'll leave it at that. There's probably about one thing I can grow. But if all of the knowledge of all of the farmers and all of the country are feeding me, I like that a lot better.
Me too.
We have to keep that organized. We have to not have electric trucks blow it up in Montana in the winter. And, we're doing our small part by purchasing more of the output.
Yeah.
And the closer to home we purchase it, the more of that money stays in town. And, it's not hard to grasp.
No, it's not. Hey, before we wrap up, I got one last question for you. So this question anybody who's watching in Cascade County that's involved in government will want to kind of understand this a little better. So, Calumet is very, very much responsible for, believe it or not, helping fund local government. And the reason I say that is because the way our tax structure works with property taxes is property taxes fund fire, police, all that stuff. And people who are watching, sometimes some people will really understand this, some people won't. They won't understand the fact that, like, when you bring a business as large as Calumet is, and I know you're a small refinery in the big picture, but in our community, it's a big, big company. Those tax dollars all build our budgets. They project our revenues to build our budgets. Talk to me about, there's oftentimes that Calumet will protest their taxes. And what that will do is that will put all the government budgets kind of in the rears a little bit, because
waiting for the ruling.
Waiting for the ruling.
Yeah.
So talk about that if you can, about how that works and why it works.
No problem. And I think the way I don't know the details of Montana's administration, meaning DOR, but it kind of seems to work the same way as everywhere else I've lived. So, the money is gathered locally, ported up, and brought back down. When I say ported up, I mean through the county or through Helena. How much money? Well, I looked up, because I am interested in this on several levels, and I'll tell you what they are. But I looked up the Great Falls tax base, which is probably the same as the budget for the reason you just gave, and I found $30 million. So if 30 million sounds like about the right zip code, that's what the government is looking for to fund its operations, Great Falls City. Where do they get it? Well, if I pick 60,000 people so I can do this math in my head, they're collecting $500 a person. If I could collect $500 from 60,000 people, I've got $30 million. So if I said, that doesn't sound so bad, like I'll join the club, I'll live in Great Falls, I'll give them $500 and they'll take care of stuff. There'll be a police force, fire can be available on call. Some roads are going to get paved, I hope.
Right.
The water's reliable, somebody's checking it, like I can trust it, it's safe. That's a good deal. Make it a little more expensive and say, yeah, but 500 head means, if there's a breadwinner and a spouse and 2 kids, that guy has to kick in 2,000. Okay, whatever.
Right.
So let's play it out. So that sounds okay so far. And I also looked up that the city's budget had been growing 7% a year. So I don't know if 7% is good, bad, or indifferent. 30 million felt okay. 7% is not terrible. I mean, it's not 20.
Right.
So I'm kind of predisposed to start off thinking this is reasonably well governed and well stewarded. There's never enough money. Somebody always wants the next thing. So there's always going to be upward pressure on spending.
Absolutely.
Now, let's go back to where it comes from, though. So we bought a refinery, and I looked this up. We were paying $1.7 million that year. That was the assessment. That's what we paid. The current assessment is 12. Our tariff has gone up 700%. It doubled from last year to this year. Yours double at your house?
Not doubled, but it went up.
But it's pushing it, yeah. So now you've got everybody's attention, mine too, which is why I was looking up some of this stuff. We cut the size of our crude oil refinery in half. And I'm told by DOR, that's great, but you can keep paying what you paid before, even though you got half the business that you had. And here's your new assessment for the renewable business. So everybody's looking for money. This is a delicate conversation everywhere you go, because it becomes personal really quick.
Absolutely.
If there's not enough money, somebody's thing that they really wanted is the next one on the list that we didn't get to. And it might even be an important thing that everybody agrees to. Right. Sometimes they're frivolous and it's easier to cut them off. But how much of the budget should Calumet pay all by itself?
Right. Yeah.
So at the current assessment, 12 million into 30 is we're paying 40% of the operation. That seems like an awful lot for one guy, and I'm the guy.
Yeah.
Because I'm the head of the business. 40%. Now, if this was a corporation, I'd say, what the heck? I'm going to pay 11% more and I'll have 51. And I will then start making all the rules and I will call all the shots because I own it.
Right.
Right. So that's, as soon as you say that, everybody falls out of their chair and starts, reacting. Right. So it's like, no, that's not what we want. That's not how it works. Well, then where do you stop?
Right.
Because we funded 10% of the budget when we bought it. How are we up to 40 and where is it going?
Yeah.
And so the word I'm trying to avoid is fair, because there's nothing I hate more than hearing, well, they have to pay their fair share. Hate that phrase.
Yeah.
Because it dodges the entire question.
It does.
What is it that needs to be paid? Who benefits? And how should we arrange the money?
And another fact I think that people need to hear and understand too is that when your company protests, they always get a reduced rate. So that's been my experience, is that Calumet doesn't protest and then the DOR comes back and it's like, nope, you still owe. It's usually a reduced rate. So if you're learning anything, why wouldn't you do that? Why would you not? Because that's silly, because you know that the first number that comes in is not what you're going to pay.
Yeah, I would take that a different direction though. So
please do.
And I'm not close to the history, so okay. I assume that I'll just say let's say that's what's been going on, and that's right. I don't know how many times this has happened. I'm interested now, so I'm gonna become familiar. But there's something wrong with the process if the review panel says you're right, you weren't treated fairly, we're going to give you the relief you asked for. Well, wait. So thanks to the review panel, but I want to come back to why wasn't I treated fairly?
Exactly.
So there's something wrong with the process if that's what's at the root of it. So we're going to find that out. Let me twist this another way though. So if I said for $30 million and 60,000 people, it's $500 a head to live here, what per head should a corporation pay? I got 300 employees. We can do the math another way. For that $12 million assessment, the city of Great Falls proposes that we should send $40,000 per employee for the privilege of having our business here.
Right. And the question is, would that money, and this is the question, would that money not be better served paid to the employee?
I would think, because that way it's definitely staying local, and you go pretty quickly to who decides what to spend it on. Right. So when you start,
that's always the issue with taxes.
I'm giving you both ends of this, and I'm not Solomon. So I'm not going to reconcile this. I'm just going to set up the question. So if I got 60,000 people and everybody kicked in $500, are you really going to have a town meeting to decide if a couple of those collars that hold the manhole have sunk 6 inches into the street and we really ought to deal with that? Or are you going to delegate that to somebody to operate it for you? And I'm in favor of the delegation because I don't want to go to a bunch of town meetings about a bunch of minutia for $500. But if you are telling Calumet, you guys have to kick in $40,000 a head and we will make all of the decisions, I'm like, well, wait a minute. It came out of my guys' pockets. When do they get to weigh in?
Absolutely.
And so back to the word that I'm a little squeamish on, the word fair, but you can go too far. And if there's not balance, then something is going to be appealable. And if the grounds for appeal are just, we're going to win. And then I'm going to ask you a different question, not, well, the city got, however much withheld out of their budget and therefore they couldn't do the next thing. And I picked up the paper and I found out it was my fault. I'm going to ask you, well, wait a minute. Why did you think for a second I should personally pay for that thing?
Absolutely. So here's been my frustration with it for since I've been kind of in the major budget game, And I remember back when I worked at the city, this issue came up over and over again. And my question was always this. I don't think it's an issue of that you guys protest. I don't think that's the issue, because everybody sees when you win your appeal, it's like, well, they were going to have to pay more for nothing. Like everyone knows that's not fair, because I've appealed things, and everyone appeals things in taxes. They question it. Why am I paying so much? And then sometimes the answer is, well, we really shouldn't have made you pay that much. So here's some money back, or this is now your new bill, move on. And you stop and think to yourself, well, if I wasn't thinking, I just wrote the check, that money was not, use your word, fairly taken from me. And it doesn't matter, because they're not giving, at that point, then if you didn't do the appeal process, you never get it back. My frustration has always been, just get it right. Like, go with what it should be, because the history I know and I understand is a Calumet or the predecessor companies win it. And so I would be like, well, if every time I get a bill, I know it's not correct, every time I'm going to appeal it. I'm not even going to question it. I'm going to be like, okay, we'll get ready for the appeal, because last year we won it. This year we're going to win it, and off we go. One of my questions I wanted to ask was, you guys have a facility in Billings. You have a refinery in Billings, or
we don't, but I want to talk about refineries in Billings.
So there's
while we're talking about tax.
So the refineries in Billings, though, are they in the same boat? Are they having to appeal their taxes? How does that work?
So first of all, I assume that if that's public information, then we could both go find out. I don't know what they do, but what I can tell you is that we went and looked up what they're paying. So let's just do some. Since I'm an engineer, you already know I like numbers. I'll spit a couple out. We're a 15,000 barrel per day refinery. On average, the three guys in Billings are 60,000. So each one of them is 4 times our size.
Okay.
Some of them have a lower assessment than us.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to stop right there. 4 times bigger, lower assessment. Now I'm going to back up about 5 minutes and say, and we cut our size of our crude running business in half, and they said that's fine, but we're going to leave the assessment right at the same number.
Wow.
So what you're arguing for, or maybe what I'm teeing up here, is it cannot be the case that DOR has an objective metric for this. And the second that they're being arbitrary and capricious, and I should pay just the same as somebody 4 times bigger or even more than them, when my business is half as big as it was last year and I don't get that reflected in the assessment, which we didn't, because we asked for the easy thing first. It's like, we're half as big, you're going to lower this, right? No, we're not going to lower it. Well, okay. Then I'm going to have to ask for some help.
Huh.
I'm going to have to appeal that.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know it was that much more in Billings.
It is crazy. And I understand enough about the accounting that led to that outcome, but it's ridiculous. So, that's...
Wow. Well, I think
that's what we're facing. So imagine that both of your neighbors on both sides paid 1/10 what you pay.
Right.
What is the first thing you're going to do?
Well, and I'm living in a house that's 1/4 the size as them. I'm living in a 2-bedroom house, and they're living in a 7-bedroom.
Yeah. You're going straight down, and you're filling out the forms, because this can't be fair.
No, it can't work.
And so when this comes back around, if let's just stitch together 3 things we talked about. A, in my personal opinion, and since I'm the head of the business, that'll manifest into hiring some people and becoming good at this. We're going to spend quality time regularly talking to the community. They'll know who we are. They'll know what we're doing. They'll know what we're thinking. They'll know we might envision having a crusher on Joe Stanek's land, which we control now through a lease, and which we can own if we want to own it. Somebody may show up and say, I feel very, very strongly about that. I wouldn't have thought so. It wouldn't have been in my mind. And now I know that, and I can perhaps involve that person in a decision that might affect them in some way.
Absolutely.
Once I understand it. I'm a fan of that. We're never all going to see eye to eye on everything, but if we're not talking, it'll be worse.
Absolutely.
Number 2, the word equitable. So I'm going to take away the word fair, because I already told you I'm squeamish.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. But the word equitable means equal treatment. Means we're going to be treated the same. Now, if that means that within a group of businesses will pay more than a different group, which is a group of homeowners who have a house and a mortgage. If those are going to be different rates, that's okay, because within my group of businesses, I'm being treated equitably.
Mhm.
Right now, we don't even have that basic condition met.
No, we don't.
And that is going to have to get ironed out, because you got, if memory serves, 26 of the counties are now suing Helena. I'm gonna broad brush it because there's different things going on, but like, we don't agree with how the money is being collected and sent back. We don't like this on education. We don't like that on the assessments of the
Mhm.
real property. And there we go, not talking to each other, and now we got to talk through
Now
lawyers.
talk to lawyers.
So I'm not a fan. Now,
Well,
all I can do, so that goes a bit above my pay grade, but it is context. That is the environment we are all in here. So what I can do is run around and tell our story, say what it looks like from where we sit, ask the odd question, answer lots and lots of questions, and over time, that's going to be good for everybody.
Well, and I wanted to bring that up because I think it's important. My frustration has always been with this whole situation is the government needs to get it right. So that, because what you have is you have state government, which is a bigger government in DOR, and they're not getting it right. And then that's having a trickle down effect on local government. Local government really doesn't care what Calumet's going to pay. They care that they know the answer to project their budget.
Mhm.
Like, they don't, like, it is what it is. It's always getting reduced to a better rate. I won't say fair rate, but I'll say a better rate anyway. So local government really doesn't care. And I want everyone watching this to understand that. Like, all we need to do is project it, because the faster we can project it, the faster we can go. And then we can make better predictions on what we're going to be able to do in the next year.
Yeah.
And so I get frustrated with a bigger form of government doing something that's creating a trickle down effect that's stalling out local government. That's where my frustration is. And
No, I think it's fair, and we kind of get caught in the middle. I'm going to make an analogy, and then I'm going to come back. If you don't like the price at the pump, who are you mad at?
Right.
When you fuel your vehicle, who are you going to get mad at? So the federal government has done a good job making you mad at the oil companies. We got nothing to do with that.
Right.
The price of crude oil in the world is because of geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the price at the pump is because of taxes.
Yeah.
Next question.
Exactly.
I make about $0.10 a gallon on all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it costs you $4. Go yell at somebody else. Now, if I make the analogy and then come back to taxes, I don't understand enough about the details of how the money moves within Montana. I do have the rough sense that it gets ported up to the top and then cascaded back down. And that kind of redistribution is always going to have some noise at the margins.
Mm-hmm.
The ability of a local entity to project how that's going to work and how much they should count on receiving so that they can, true up their budget or be long or short if they like to run credits or deficits. That's important. You need a good planner for that and an experienced one. Because if in Cascade County that Calumet is not treated fairly, if the guys in Billings are getting a free ride, we're going to win that.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's been a bunch of examples of this, what the heck? You might as well plan that the courts will agree that we should be treated fairly versus the people in Billings. You might as well plan for it.
No, absolutely. That's kind of the way I felt about it, because I've never seen, in my experience, I've never seen it go the other way. So I just think I wanted you to talk about that because I think sometimes people get frustrated with Calumet, like, oh, they're protesting their taxes. This is, why would they do that? They're, they're a big corporation. They got plenty of money. And I hate that, because when you're responsible, I mean, any leader who's responsible for a budget, whether it's taxpayer, like I'm responsible for taxpayer money. Well, I take that money seriously. Like, I take that very seriously. And I want to run as best a budget as I can. And you're in a for-profit business, but you have all these people that are dependent upon you. You feed lots of families, you do these things. So you're having that same mindset. And to just say, well, we're just going to throw money away, because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's like, I've got a rich uncle, so I don't have to work. I'll just tell him he should pay me for,
Right.
my cell phone subscription.
Right. Exactly.
The end of that road, I don't think is. Look, that's out of step with the values in the Intermountain.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to seriously show up and say you can afford it, so you should pay more. In fact, you should pay mine for me. And if they do, I'm going to go straight to, well, we didn't make any money last year. So if I didn't make any money, is my tax bill zero? Oh, no, you have to program it every year. It has to be fixed. Well, but I can't pay you. Now what?
Yeah.
So, I mean, no matter how, if you engage on, we don't have enough money, we're going to squeeze somebody for more, who should it be? Then I'd say, welcome to the 21st century. That seems to be going on everywhere.
Oh, it's terrible.
So it's begging. It's a perfect opportunity for good governance. I think some strong leadership and some prudent policy will go a long way. And I think that's probably going to start this November.
Yeah, I hope so.
We'll see.
Well, Bruce, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This was a great interview. I learned a ton. You are a very, very intelligent man and do a very good job in an interview. So I hope you come back.
Now, your problem is I'm 68 and I have opinions, and you're going to get them all.
No, it's perfect. That's what I want.
All right, sir.
Thank you so much.
Enjoyed it.
God bless you.
You bet. Thank you for the show.
Yep. Hey, everybody. Jesse Slaughter with the Pursuit Podcast. And we really appreciate the amazing support already that this channel has received. Our social media is blowing up. Everywhere we look, people are liking and clicking and commenting. But what we really need you to do is subscribe to our Facebook page and follow us on Spotify. That's what drives this channel. That's what's going to keep this channel going forever. Tim and Ben are behind the scenes doing tireless editing, working on this to make this come out the way it does, this high quality product that it is. So please go in there, click subscribe, click follow, and make sure that this channel sticks around for a long time, because we truly believe it's doing a lot of great things for our community. But there's many, many other people out there who we need to support. So follow and subscribe today. Thank you.